back to Cinema Wellman. I am your host, David, and today you're here for part 2 of the 70s show. And today we're going to talk about some films that were released from the years 1975 to 1979. And as I mentioned in part 1, the decade of the 70s is extremely important to me because I was born in 1962. So a lot of these films formed my, movie-making brain in a way, if that makes sense. And for that reason, these are some standouts, and these are things that affected me and had an impact on me and my film going moving forward. The films that we're going to talk about today combined for 51 Oscar nominations, 12 Oscar wins, and a Special Achievement Oscar for special effects. None of those were for the first film that we're going to discuss, though. So please fasten your seatbelts and return your tray table to its full upright and locked position because the stewardess is flying the plane. Let's talk about Airport 75, made in and released in 1975. Now, I know for a fact that I'll never be accused of being a movie snob because of my love for films such as Airport 75 and Airport 77 and Airport 79, The Concorde, and that's why they made these kind of DVD things for people like me. This is the terminal pack of Airport DVDs, and yes, it has all 4 Airport movies. And this is the kind of stuff that I geeked out over when I was in my DVD phase that streaming has removed from my pleasure zone. So this one, I was always a fan of these big budget, over-budgeted, disaster epic messes with the all-star cast. This is one of the best of that bunch. This is the film that was partially parodied in Airplane. This is a movie Linda Blair wishes she wasn't in. And this is, as I mentioned before, this is the one where the stewardess is flying the plane. So this stuff is brilliant. Now, this, from the Only in Movies file, comes this little tidbit. In Airport 1975, Efren Zimbalist Jr. plays the pilot of an airliner that is struck by a plane piloted by Dana Andrews. This is the second time planes piloted by Zimbalist Jr. and Andrews have collided in movies. You can't make this stuff up. Helen Reddy is here. I Am Woman. Helen Reddy is here as the guitar-playing nun. This is fantastic. We're gonna talk about a little bit of the posters, like I did in the first part, because the posters during the 70s were awesome and they gave you some exposition. This poster cheers, as I call them. Something hit us. The crew is dead. Help us. Please help us. And then you can add on to that, the stewardess is flying the plane, which is one of my all-time favorites. Next, we're going to talk about a sci-fi cult classic titled A Boy and His Dog from 1975, and it features a pre-Miami Vice Don Johnson wandering around a post-apocalyptic wasteland with his telepathic dog, Blood. This movie inspired George Miller to make Mad Max, so cheers to that. And the underground, where some people live in this wasteland post-apocalyptic world, is just it's crazy. It's lunacy. It's a utopian land. Jason Robards rules over it, and everybody's like covered with zinc oxide. It's really bizarre. It's really strange. The best thing about A Boy and His Dog, other than the fact that it takes place in 2024, is that Blood is played by Tiger of Brady Bunch fame, and it adds even more to this surrealistic lunacy. The final line delivered by Blood is just cult classic gold. What does the poster say? The year is 2024, a future you'll probably live to see. Bonus cheers for adding an R-rated, rather kinky tale of survival. Next, do you recognize this line? I'm robbing a bank because they got money here. Yep, pretty simple. And that's from Dog Day Afternoon from 1975. Dog Day Afternoon is just amazing. Like, again, a lot of these films are ones that you've heard of and you've seen and everything, and I'm just throwing in my 2 cents for what it's worth. So Dog Day Afternoon, directed by old friend of Cinema Wellman, Sidney Lumet, one of the best bank robbery movies of all time. And that's saying a lot since this robbery does not go off well at all. Stars 9-time Oscar nominee Al Pacino before he started shouting all of his lines, along with the wonderful John Cazale. Now, great fact about John Cazale. John Cazale appeared in only 5 feature films. And get this, all five, The Godfather, The Conversation, The Godfather Part 2, Dog Day Afternoon, and The Deer Hunter, were nominated for Best Picture. So he makes 5 feature films, and they all are nominated for Best Picture. That's quite a murderer's row of films, and we were cheated out of more from Cazale because he died at an early age of cancer at 43. This film is extremely serious, and at times it is just really, really funny. It's based on a true story, and it's amazing to read accounts of some of the real people who were involved, the real hostages. The real bank manager stated that he had more laughs that night than he had in weeks. And one of the tellers stated that if these bank robbers were house guests, she would have had a great night. So it's one of those things. It doesn't have a happy ending, but I mean, it's really an interesting character study. Pacino is fantastic. Charles Durning, who I love. Charles Durning is exceptional as Moretti. He's the police officer he's got way too much on his plate. He's in way over his head with this. The crowd is kind of like an extra character in this film, and the way that the crowd and the onlookers and the people that are looking and say, hey, this bank robbery, we got to go and look at it. They became an important piece to the storytelling. So it's a great thing. It's chaotic, it's tense, it's gritty, it's 70s New York. It's everything that 70s New York is. And there's another one on this list coming up later that also fits into that category. Poster cheers. The robbery should have taken 10 minutes. 8 hours later, it was the hottest thing on TV. And it's all true. Next, from 1975, here's a line. Yeah, jet setters, assorted zombies, come here to watch a climb. If they're lucky, they get to see a man die on the mountain. If that sounds familiar, you may have seen The Eiger Sanction from 1975, based on a novel I love, written by Trevanian, who also wrote Shibumi. I just read that Shibumi is going to be a movie. I was very happy about that. Anyway, The Eiger Sanction is about an assassin who's also an art professor collector, because that happens all the time, played by Clint Eastwood. And he needs to carry out a sanction, during a perilous mountain climbing expedition. And he's not quite sure which member of this expedition he is supposed to hit. So it's got all this intrigue, and you don't know who to trust. Thriller from start to finish. Great supporting. George Kennedy appears again. And George Kennedy is the only person as Joe Petroni. George Kennedy as Joe Petroni, the only person to appear in all 4 airport movies, just in case you wanted to know. The Eiger Sanction also features fantastic scenery and some harrowing mountain climbing sequences. The poster reads, his lifeline held by the assassin he hunted. Yeah, so there's a lot of intrigue in this. Next, here's a line from the next film. Did he cut your hair? No, we didn't get around to that. So this is also from 1975, Shampoo. And I'm going to ask our friends at IMDb to describe this, because it's fantastic. On Election Day, 1968, a hairdresser and ladies' man is too busy cutting hair and dealing with his various girlfriends and his mistress, whose husband he meets and finds out is having an affair with his ex-girlfriend. Yep, you kind of need a scorecard to figure out who's being faithful or unfaithful with whom during this. And Warren Beatty plays George, and George is an LA hairdresser. This film is all about sex and who's having it with who and where they're having it and how they're having it and everything. The trailer features a shot of one of George's customers sitting in the chair at his station. He's facing her. She's in the chair. Her head is bent down. Her head is in his crotch, and he's blow drying her hair. So is that subtle enough for you? This film, I remember seeing this, and even as a young person thinking, this is kind of dirty. It's really funny, and it's very sexual. Great cast, Beatty, good friend of Cinema Wellman, Julie Christie. We've talked about her before. Goldie Hawn, the great Lee Grant, Carrie Fisher, young Carrie Fisher, and the always enjoyable Jack Warden. Directed by Hal Ashby, this is a frank look at how things were in LA in the 70s, or at least I think they were, based on this film. These shenanigans certainly never took place at my mom's beauty shop. Poster cheers. Your hairdresser does it better. Next, listen to this line. I'll just die if I don't get this recipe. I'll just die if I don't get this recipe. I'll just die if I don't get this recipe. From 75, The Stepford Wives. Now, this is kind of a suburban Westworld. I read that it's one of Jordan Peele's favorite films and it influenced him to make Get Out. I love reading about that stuff. It's also based on a novel by the author of Rosemary's Baby. So, you know, there's a pedigree there, and it's going to be pretty dark. Now, The Stepford Wives centers around the women of Stepford, Connecticut. The perfect women of Stepford, Connecticut. The two perfect women of Stepford, Connecticut. If Westworld imagined a theme park where you could act out your every desire, The Stepford Wives brings that idea home and puts it in the kitchen and in the bedroom of your house. The reboot with Nicole Kidman was passable, I guess, but there's no beating Catherine Ross, who I love dearly, and Paula Prentice in this original. And yes, that's Tina Louise from Gilligan's Island. Worth a watch just for the hats the ladies wear. This is really good. This is a tasty little cautionary treat warning men to be careful what they wish for in their wives. Here's the poster. Something is happening in the town of Stepford where the men spend their nights doing something secret, and every woman acts like every man's perfect wife, where a young woman watches the dream become a nightmare and sees the nightmare engulf her best friend and realizes that at any moment, any second, her turn is coming. Well, that's pretty chatty for a poster, don't you think? You want us to watch the movie or not? Come on now. Watch The Stepford Wives. Next, maybe there's another CIA inside the CIA. That's from 3 Days of the Condor from 1975. Now, the 70s did this, I think, better than any other decade, and that might be, you know, Cold War paranoia hanging over our heads and everything, and not knowing who the bad guys are or where they are and how secret your own government is. So there was a lot of that during this decade. The list of the people attached to this spy thriller, extremely impressive. We've got Robert Redford, we've got Faye Dunaway, Max von Sydow, Cliff Robertson, directed by Sid Pollock. Not to mention the Fugazi postman with the gun. That guy I never forgot, and I always looked at the postman's shoes after that, and if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Here's from IMDb. A bookish CIA researcher in Manhattan finds all his co-workers dead and must outwit those responsible until he figures out who he can really trust. Spoiler alert, he can't trust anyone. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, this is a great example of the paranoia conspiracy movies that proliferated 70s cinema. Most of them done very well. This is truly one of the best of them. The main character kind of in over his head in a dangerous situation straight out of Hitchcock thriller, and this one involves the CIA. Redford and Dunaway are great together. Von Sydow is Von Sydow, so that means he's sinister. And that's how we like our Von Sydow, is it not? A taut spy thriller, great companion piece to The Parallax View, which I mentioned in an earlier episode. And you can't miss with Robert Redford or Warren Beatty, especially in this decade. Poster cheers. His CIA code name is Condor. In the next 72 hours, almost everyone he trusts will try to kill him. Love that. All right, next, from 1976, here's a line. They're all going to laugh at you. Carrie. Now, I know that this is probably the third time that I brought up Carrie in blogs and episodes in recent months. We can't get rid of her. You don't want to get rid of her, or you don't want to cross her. That's for sure. So even though I've covered it recently, I have to mention I couldn't leave it off this list. Start with the compelling Bullied Beyond Belief story by Stephen King. Add director Brian De Palma in his thriller wheelhouse. This is what he did best. Top that with two amazing performances, both Oscar-nominated, Sissy Spacek and Piper Laurie. You've got a very worthwhile 98-minute popcorn chomper on your hands. Brian De Palma uses this split screen. He did it in quite a few of his movies. He uses it to perfection here. During the prom sequence, it just adds to the overall visual effect that he creates. This is creepy, and it's scary, and it makes you hate bullies even more than you did going into it. How many kids saw this and wish they had Carrie's abilities? Yeah, a lot. Poster cheers. If you've got a taste for terror, take Carrie to the prom. Yeah, there you go. That's why I didn't want to go to any of the proms in high school. Next, There Is No Renewal. That is from 1976's Logan's Run. Now, Logan's Run, if you remember me speaking earlier about the Omega Man with Charlton Heston and Soylent Green with Charlton Heston, again, to bring out another DVD from the archives, this is what I loved about them putting DVDs out, especially decades after the movies were made. They got to pop 3 of them on the same Blu-ray. And this one, I was lucky enough to get Logan's Run, Omega Man, and Soylent Green. So, Logan's Run. Once again, we have a 70s movie that is exploring the world of total pleasure. This is along the lines of the Stepford Wives and Westworld, but Logan's Run is set pretty far in the future, the year 2116 to be precise. And in 2116, everything is wonderful. Everything is hunky-dory until you turn 30. And when you turn 30, you go to Carousel. And in a utopian world where everyone is under 30, you can just imagine what happens at Carousel. This is not the first or last time that movies have explored euthanasia in some form or another. This one's fun because of the sci-fi and the sets and the almost not there wardrobe worn by Jenny Agutter, and new on the scene, Farrah Fawcett in this movie, Farrah Fawcett Majors. Reading about this film, Jenny and interviews with Jenny Agutter, she in every interview mentioned these outfits. She said she doesn't go to sci-fi conventions because she doesn't want to see everybody dressed like her. They were barely wearing these tunics, and this thing is rated PG. It's kind of interesting. There's more side boob in that movie than the National Enquirer ever printed in any of their issues. So in any event, fun time. The special effects are probably cheesy, but it's pre-Star Wars, so cut it some slack. Poster. Welcome to the 23rd century. The perfect world of total pleasure. There's just one catch. I love stuff like that. Next, this line you should know. Is it safe? Probably gives you goosebumps. If you recognized it, you probably got chills and it made your mouth hurt. This is from 1976's Marathon Man. I'm not sure how you feel about your dentist, but I've actually had very good luck with my dentists over the years. Dr. Migliorini is a cult hero with my daughters. Dr. Miggs, we love you. The people that take care of me now at the Lowell Tooth Docs in Lowell, they are phenomenal. They're very friendly. They're very caring. They're wonderful people. Couldn't be happier on the dental front. And I realize most people don't feel that way. Many people believe that dentists are evil sadists who exist only to deliver pain with their assorted implements of doom that come out in that little tray that they keep covered. They don't want you to quite look at it because they don't want you to see what they're going to put in your mouth and grind everything in there. Those of you that think that about dentists should see Marathon Man and take a little visit to Nazi dentist Sir Laurence Olivier. From IMDb, after the shocking murder of his older brother, a New York history student finds himself inexplicably hounded by shadowy government agents on the trail of a Nazi war criminal who is trying to retrieve smuggled diamonds. Dustin Hoffman, I think at his best here, he's the history student. Laurence Olivier, off the wall, sinister, evil as the Nazi war criminal. Marathon Man will have you pacing the room, cringing, watching through the little slivers in between your fingers. The poster simply reads, a thriller. And that's one of the biggest cinematic poster understatements in film history. This is a wild one. Next, this line you definitely have heard. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. That's the great Peter Finch from Network in 1976. Network, truly one of the most powerful, prescient movies ever made. Written by playwright and screenwriter Paddy Chayefsky, directed by Sid Lumet, who directed Dog Day Afternoon. Network exposes the media like no other film has since or before or since. And if it bleeds, it leads has never been more true. One of the best, I know I talk about cast all the time, forgive me for that, but let me talk about the cast of Network. Faye Dunaway, William Holden, Peter Finch, Robert Duvall, Ned Beatty, and Beatrice Straight. And Beatrice Straight won a Best Supporting Actress Oscar for her performance, even though she's only on screen for 5 minutes and 2 seconds. So that's still an Oscar record. That one not that there should be a time limit and someone should be clocking it, but only 5 minutes and 2 seconds. I mean, you better blow away the competition if that's going to happen. In any event, Finch and Faye Dunaway won Oscars for their performances. And there have been many instances since 1975 where the media has gone off the rails. And my first thought is this movie. It's a drama, it's a satire, but the crazier things get in the current days of media, more and more of Network kind of looks like a documentary when you watch it. The poster, prepare yourself for a perfectly outrageous motion picture. Television will never be the same. That's a phenomenal film. Network is just amazing. So we have back-to-back iconic lines from film history. Here's the line from the next film that we're going to discuss. You talking to me? You talking to me? Now, I'm not going to do the De Niro impersonation. I'm just going to read it. Who the hell else are you talking to? You talking to me? I'm the only one here. Like so many other people, totally blown away by the first time I saw this film. Martin Scorsese's New York City is a filthy cesspool of degenerates and hustlers. This is New York City at its grimiest and nastiest. Take Dog Day Afternoon and multiply it. Show that gritty New York. This is the nighttime in New York. De Niro is sensational as cabbie Travis Bickle, whose downward spiral we're in the back seat for. Harvey Keitel's ultra sleazy pimp sport is so scummy that after every scene he's in, you're going to want to take a shower. And 14-year-old Jodie Foster is so believable as teen prostitute Iris, you'll want to rescue her as much as Travis does. Jodie Foster in 1976 was 14 years old. I was 14 years old in 1976. What was I doing? I was wearing this very tie as an 8th grader at Sacred Heart School, this nice little plaid number. How about that? And Jodie Foster was making Taxi Driver with Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro. So, ever do that to yourself? Don't do that. That's no fun. This movie is still stunningly violent, even according to today's standards, and the tale of isolation and loneliness, it stays with you for quite a while. And as Travis Bickle says, someday a real rain will come and wash all this scum off the streets. It's a powerful film. Next, from 1977, here's a line. Cancel the Super Bowl? That's like canceling Christmas. This is Black Sunday. So peril at a sporting event could be its own genre. That might be an upcoming episode. We've got this one, Black Sunday, terrorists at the Super Bowl. We've got 2-minute warning, sniper at the Super Bowl. We've got sudden death, terrorists at the Stanley Cup Finals. And throw in the Naked Gun, brainwashed Queen Elizabeth assassin Reggie Jackson. Now, crowds in danger have always been low-hanging fruit for movies, but that fruit's usually yummy, so we want some of it. This sports disaster thriller features one of the few times that a movie got approval from the NFL to use their teams' names and logos, along with those sacred words, Super Bowl. They might sue me just for saying that. It's the Cowboys versus the Steelers. It's Bruce Dern versus the great Robert Shaw. It's the Goodyear Blimp versus the Orange Bowl. You can't beat this combo for an entertaining suspense thriller. Poster reads, it could be tomorrow. Well, only if it's Saturday. In any event, here we go. Next, Moscow in Flames, missiles headed towards New York, film at 11. That line is from 1977's The Kentucky Fried Movie. And it's, if you haven't seen the Kentucky Fried Movie, you got to see it. It's just so bizarre. It's all skits and vignettes, and they're all woven together, and it's crazy, and it's directed by John Landis, and it's highly inappropriate, and it's highly entertaining. It's written by the people responsible for Airplane, so Jim Abrahams and the Zucker brothers. It's like an uncensored SNL episode with links and connections and segues that are at times Monty Python-esque. My favorite parts are the movie parodies, and there are more than a couple. We have A Fistful of Yen, which is an Enter the Dragon kind of takeoff. And we have Cleopatra Schwartz, which is a takeoff on Cleopatra Jones, and you know how I feel about those films. Both pay homage to the source material with tongue planted firmly in cheek. The final segment of a pervy news crew being able to see two kids making out on the couch while delivering the news is hysterical. It's worth it just to see that. Watch this double feature with Amazon Women on the Moon. If you could find both of those, watch them back to back. And See You Next Wednesday in Feel Around. The next line, and again, I'm not going to do the impersonation. I'm not good at impersonations, but I wish I could do an impersonation of this character. Nobody, and I mean nobody, makes Sheriff Buford T. Justice look like a possum's pecker. And that is the great Jackie Gleason. I love Jackie Gleason so much for so many reasons. And one of the reasons was his portrayal of Sheriff Buford T. Justice. I love it. And now I'm not saying Smokey and the Bandit should be hailed as cinematic brilliance and it should be considered one of the top films of the decade. I'm just saying it was a lot of fun. Supposedly a guilty pleasure of Alfred Hitchcock, of all people. I love that. So at least Hitch agrees with me. And say what you want about Burt Reynolds. This was his time. He ruled this time. The late 70s and the 80s, he was the king, and this role was perfect for him. He was the bandit. Sally Field, delightful. Don't you love Sally Field? She's Carrie, the runaway bride. Jerry Reed is Bandit's accomplice, Snowman, hauling Coors beer of all things. Like people would want that. For Big Enos and Little Enos, scenery chewing Pat McCormick and Paul Williams. Even seeing the two of them standing next to each other in matching outfits is enough to make you crack up. They're all wonderful, but like I said, my favorite part of this film is Jackie Gleason. Every time he shows up, he steals every scene as he pursues Bandit across the country in hot pursuit. This is, again, I'm just laughing thinking of it. Oh, I have to watch this again, and I'll probably dislike it. Speaking of disliking, first of all, I'm getting ahead of myself. Here's the line. The film is from 1978. You are infinite different, infinite superior. You are born of the noblest blood in the world. And this is from The Boys from Brazil. And I think this would be a great double feature with Marathon Man because both feature Nazis and Laurence Olivier in one. Olivier's a Nazi, and in this one, he's a Nazi hunter. Gregory Peck. Oh my goodness, Atticus Finch. What did they do to you? He's unrecognizable as Dr. Joseph Mengele. And he is just so evil in this. So this is to get back to what I was saying earlier. When I was doing research for this, I watched Siskel and Ebert's review of it when it first came out. And they both hated it so much. So once again, it shows how much I know. I don't know anything, as everyone watching shuts off. Something that I do know is that I love to watch James Mason act. It doesn't matter the role or the movie, and not even Siskel and Ebert can take that away from me. Poster cheers, if they survive. Will we? They're cloning Hitler. That's what it's about. I'm sorry, I kind of glossed over that because I was busy with everything else. Next, from 1978, He Came Home. Yes, Halloween. And I realize there have been, seems to be hundreds of Halloween movies made since John Carpenter's classic original was released 44 years ago. This one, to me, is still the best, without a doubt. Shot in 3 weeks with a budget of $300,000, Halloween went on to gross over $47 million, and it's still considered one of the most successful independent films ever made. And if you ask me, it's scary. It's still scary after all these years. And it did it the right way. let's hail to John Carpenter for that. And again, a personal thank you for John Carpenter for introducing me to lifelong love, Jamie Lee Curtis. Thank you for that, John. Much appreciated. And the poster reads, "The night he came home." And that he is Michael Myers, of course. Next from 1979, and the line I'm going to shoot at you is, "It's showtime, folks." And this is not a horror movie. It sounds like it a little bit. It's All That Jazz, which is a musical. And it was one of the first movie musicals that I really enjoyed. And I had seen old movie musicals, watching them with my mom on Turner Classic Movies and such. But this, All That Jazz, was current. And so it caught my attention. And I realize now that one of the reasons why I really like this is the presence of Roy Scheider, my Captain Brody from Jaws. He's the star. Scheider could do no wrong in my eyes. I even liked 52 Pickup. And this wasn't the type of role that I was used to seeing Roy Scheider in, like the 7-Ups, like, being a cop or a sheriff or, some guy, like architect, or not a choreographer. And this is director-choreographer Bob Fosse's life story, directed by Fosse himself. So Fosse is really Scheider's Joe Gideon, this chain-smoking, womanizing, drug-using dancer choreographer. So it's no surprise that Fosse hits this one out of the park. It's his life. The music's amazing. The dancing's amazing. Choreography's amazing. The performances are amazing. It is dazzling. All That Jazz. The poster reads, "All that work, all that glitter, all that pain, all that love, all that crazy rhythm, all that jazz." Next, from 1979, you will definitely recognize this line. "I love the smell of napalm in the morning." What's it smell like? Well, napalm. I mentioned in an earlier blog that an episode that it's a red flag whenever a documentary is made about how difficult a movie shoot was. And in many cases, those movies are absolute duds. Apocalypse Now would be an exception to that rule. This almost didn't get made. And when you watch it, you can just, if you watch it with an eye on that, oh my God, how did they do this? How did Francis Ford Coppola do this? How did he pull this off? There's an awful lot going on in front of me. How on earth did he coordinate all of this? Well, it wasn't easy. Filming was scheduled to take 6 weeks, and it took 16 months. Francis Ford Coppola lost 100 pounds while making this movie. And again, no wonder they make a documentary about it. That documentary is titled Hearts of Darkness, A Filmmaker's Apocalypse. That is a phenomenal double feature. I've done that. That's a good one. See those back to back. Good stuff. Next, I'm not going to give you a line from this because it's all music. It's a musical from 1979, and it fits in with the things that I was saying about All That Jazz. So it's another musical, and it's another current musical, even though it was made in the late 70s, about the late 60s. You get what I mean. This music in Hair is psychedelic. It's political. It's subversive. The story isn't exactly like the original play, but its message is just as powerful. Treat Williams, to me, it will always be George Berger from Hair and Officer Danny Cielo from Prince of the City. Thank you, Treat. Those are two of my favorite performances, and they couldn't be more different. There's a great double feature. Hair, Prince of the City, the connectors being New York City, and Treat Williams. Might have to do that one someday. On a somewhat related note, I saw the play twice, once at the Colonial Theater in Boston in 1994, and again 4 years later in Cohasset, Massachusetts at the South Shore Music Circus. The Boston show was quite an eye-opener because when you came in and sat down, obviously there were people, you're not the first ones in the theater. Everyone's sitting there, people milling about and sitting down, and everyone's sitting there. The crowd is all there, and all of a sudden, several people get up out of the crowd and start walking on the armrests. They're the cast, and they had been just embedded in the audience. And they get up, and they start walking on the armrests of our seats, singing. And then they get up on stage together, and then everybody takes off their clothes. All of their clothes. And I was an adult, but I was still like sitting there going, wow, what? Wow, how about that? I was impressed. Live theater, nudity or not, Let the sun shine in. See it when you can. Next, we've only got 2 to go. Here's a line that my friends will recognize. That there is Kundalini. And Kundalini wants his hand back. Now, that's from Mad Max, and this is the one that started it all. This is the movie that spawned The Road Warrior and Mad Max Fury Road. George Miller's dystopian, not-too-distant future smorgasbord, chock full of amazing chase scenes and stunts. I love that the fact that one of George Miller's inspirations for this movie was a boy and his dog, and it totally fits. And there's another double feature for the future. I have no idea how many times I've seen Mad Max, but it's in the dozens. When The Road Warrior and Mad Max were both available on VHS, my friends and I would rarely watch one without the other. It was like a given double feature. Are we gonna watch Mad Max? Meant, are we gonna watch Mad Max and The Road Warrior? Because you didn't watch one without the other. And any movie that paid the extras in beer is worth a look. The poster reads, "The maximum force of the future." And again, I always thought that Road Warrior was better, but Mad Max is still amazing. All right, next. Warriors, come out and play. This is wild stuff. It's The Warriors from 1979. It's the last movie we're going to talk about today. And I know this was directed by Walter Hill, and kudos to Mr. Hill for a job well done. And he's done many other movies that were very good. But this one, to me, always seemed like a John Carpenter movie. Here's from IMDb. A street gang known as the Warriors must fight their way from the Bronx to their home turf on Coney Island, where they are falsely accused of assassinating a respected gang leader. The entire film is a chase sequence through the streets of New York, pretty much on foot. We're not talking about car chase here. They are being pursued as the Warriors are being chased and hounded by gang after gang after gang. And I found for you, because the interwebs are good and evil, and here's an example of the goodness. I will read to you the complete roster of gangs who are hunting down the Warriors as they desperately try to get back to Coney Island. These fictional gangs have been inspiring Halloween costumes ever since, and here they are. These are all the people chasing our friends, the Warriors, in this film. We have the Gramercy Riffs, the Rogues, Turnbull ACs, the Orphans, the Baseball Furies, the Lizzies, the Punks, the Boppers, the Hurricanes, the Hi-Hats, the Electric Eliminators, the Sacrosands, the Jones Street Boys, the Savage Huns, the Satan's Mothers, the Boyle Avenue Runners, the Moon Runners, the Van Cortlandt Rangers, the Panzers, and the Gladiators. You gotta love it. Gotta love that so much. Warriors, come out and play. Even the poster has it right. These are the armies of the night. They are 100,000 strong. They outnumber the cops 5-1. They could run New York City. Tonight, they're all out to get the Warriors. Excellent. And it's a good way to wrap it up. That's a wrap, the 70 Show Part 2. If you go to the blog, you will see all the platforms on which you can watch these films if you'd like to watch any of them. And also on the blog, there's assorted other stuff like you might be interested in that I didn't get to mention on this episode. Next time, what are we going to do next time? Next week, I'm going to hit you with November screenings, the top 10 and the bottom 5. So stay tuned for that. And I hope you enjoyed this episode and this little trip down memory lane and into the 70s. Until then, take care.